Hi, in this tutorial we'll discuss TypeScript 5.2. TypeScript 5.2 has introduced a lot of new features to the TypeScript language, and in this particular tutorial we'll discuss all of them. So in the start we'll discuss some basic things which are pretty simple, and I have the old TypeScript and the new TypeScript version opened together, and I will show you what differences they have, and then we will discuss two new features which 5.2 introduces, which are disposable and decorator metadata, and they are kind of complex, so I will do them after these basic ones. So first of all, tuples. So in previous versions before 5.2 you can define a tuple, but then you have to tuple is basically an array type where you define the type of every item for that particular array. So it's a limited length array, and you define that first item will be of type this, second item will be of type this, etc. So this is a tuple type, and previously if you were to define a tuple type, you had to either define a type with non-label types, so you can in this case do t or whatever, number, or you have to have all the types as label types. So I can say first t, second t, so that is correct. However, you cannot do this. So basically labeled and unlabeled types inside a tuple, you cannot do that. However, in the new TypeScript version you can do that. So I can say t like first t, and then the second t can be let me uncomment it. Yeah, so you can have labeled and unlabeled types inside a tuple in TypeScript 5.2. Great. Now another thing, union types. So if you have an array, and I'm pretty sure you have faced this quite a lot. Let me uncomment it. If you have an array with different types, so in this case I've got an array with type string and type number. So it can be a string array or number array, or it can be whatever. Basically at an array which can be of like two types. So basically union type. You will get an error if you do this. So let's say I say array filter x whatever, basically if you use a filter, you use any array method, you will get this error which states that, let me open this, each member of the union type blah 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 has signatures, but none of those signatures are compatible with each other. So basically it's saying that it's a union type, it has string and number are like totally different types, so you cannot apply a filter for that, and it gives a TypeScript error. I'm pretty sure you have faced it quite some time. So but in TypeScript 5.2 you can do that. So if I copy it, it won't give you that error. Now TypeScript knows that then array can be of different types and doesn't bother you. So that's pretty great. Now two more things which are related to IntelliSense. So first is, if you have, let's say, a type, in this case I have type person, and I have a I have an object, and I've specified that it is of type person. So let's say I add a name, and I say, let's say the name is Usman. Now if I type enter and I start typing another property of that type, which in this case is email, you will see that it says the full word email, which is it detects from the type, and it also says add missing comma for object member completion. So if I press tab, now not only does it add the comma, but also it completes the property name. So now I can finish the adding the value for the email. So it has a nice completion for comma as well, because it detects that you are typing one of the properties from the type you have specified. So obviously this that is another property, so let's add a comma by itself. So IntelliSense detects it by itself. So you can access IntelliSense for TypeScript and completions, etc., using this library, JavaScript and TypeScript neatly. So if you install this library and you have 5.2 version, then you will be able to access it. And 5.2 you can get basically you can install 5.2, and if you want the IDE to follow 5.2, you will add a VS Code folder and settings.json and these 3 lines basically, which basically indicate that you should use the VS Code should use the local TypeScript install, which in this case is 5.2. I should have told it earlier, I forgot, sorry. So yeah, that thing. And also another thing which is related to IntelliSense, if you have any variable, and it's kind of dumb, but if you have any variable and that variable is being used across the file, and you want to basically replace all the values with this particular, all the variables with this particular value, and you also want to remove this line, then you can do that by selecting this and then clicking this bulb and clicking inline variable. So not only does that does it remove the declaration for that variable, but it also replaces it everywhere inside the file. So if you want to do that, then do it, but I would recommend, you know, you use variables, don't use string literals. That's a bad practice. Yeah, so now two things which are entirely of features which are entirely in TypeScript 5.2. So let's remove this and open the console terminal on the console. So now let me close it and open Disposables. So disposable is a new concept. Let me remove this class. Yeah, so disposable is a new concept through which we can you know, call something, some particular like, you know, cleanup function or, you know, disposable function, whatever you want to call it, at the end of, you know, its scope. So we'll see what that is. So let's say in this case I have a particular variable and this is a function, right, do work. So what I want is at the end of this function, whenever this function ends and wherever this function ends, I want to call something. So you know, at the end I've said it should console log disposing log, but it can do anything, you know, any form of cleanup function you want. You know, maybe in React it's a prop coming and you want to call it at the end of, you know, every function. So your choice. But you know, that function could end in many places. Surely it would end when, you know, we would reach the function at the end of the function. But let's say in this case I'm doing an early return. You know, if this sum condition is false and if this sum condition is true, then I'm doing an early return as well. So I want that this particular thing happens in this case as well. So I want that whenever I'm returning from this function, I call this. So what is happening is I am, you know, entering it again and again, and in this particular case there are 2 returns. So at the end of the function, obviously I'm returning, and if this sum condition is true, that is when I'm returning. So I've copy pasted it 2 times, but maybe, you know, there are multiple conditions in which I have to return from the function, so I have to copy paste this again and again. So basically TypeScript has introduced a disposable function which we can implement, and that would basically, what it would do is whenever that particular object from that class would reach the end of the scope, then it would automatically call that disposable function of that particular class, and we'll see in a bit what that is. So I will say class log and implements disposable. So disposable is a type, and when I do class log implement disposable, this means that I have to add the disposable function inside this class, otherwise TypeScript would throw an error. That is what it is. I'm not extending it, I'm just implementing the types. So let's say I have a private property known as text. Let me add a constructor which would receive text of type string, and it would, you know, assign it to the property. So text, cool. Now it still gives an error. Why? Because I'm not, you know, property symbol.dispose is missing in type log. So basically we have to add a function with the name symbol.dispose. Now symbol.dispose is only present in 5.2, but still, even if a 5.2 for some reason it is undefined. So in the blog which TypeScript which Microsoft has posted regarding 5.2, if it gives you undefined, then you have to add that line so that symbol.dispose gets some value. So, you know, you have to do this basically. So I'll say symbol.dispose, small dispose, and that is a function. Yeah, cool. So now you can see that the error is gone. So here I will say console log, let's copy the same thing, disposing. Here in this case I will say this dot text. Cool. So now what I would do is I would use this class. So new log, let's add some text, same 1 2 3. Now let me remove this and let me remove it from here, and let me copy this here. So now what it should do is, it won't happen now, but I will show you why it won't happen. So ts node disposable dot ts. Oh, because I'm in the wrong directory, sorry. So it doesn't do anything. Why? Because if you want to use disposal, then you shouldn't use const, you should use the using keyword. So now what would happen is, whenever it would reach at the end of the scope, this variable, obviously this variable would be discarded. So whenever it would be discarded, it would call its dispose function. So now I call this, and you can see it says disposing 1 2 3. It's cool. Now if I change dispose some condition to true, and I do this again, I still get disposing 1 2 3. So every time the function would return, obviously this variable would be discarded because it has reached the end of the scope. So the dispose function for that particular disposable class would be called, and this function is pretty cool. I think it's a breaking change in TypeScript. I love it. So the next thing is decorator metadata, and that is a pretty cool feature as well. So let me clear it. Let me remove this, and also let me remove this, and also let me remove this. I will type again so that you can understand it clearly. So yeah, so decorator metadata is basically a concept through which now as part of 5.2, all classes will have a metadata associated with them. And how will we access that metadata? Through person. So let me console log for now. So console log person, and then square brackets, and then symbol dot metadata. Same thing as we did before, because the symbol dot metadata is giving me undefined. So as per the blog, you have to do this, you have to assign it a value. So right now if I run it, it would give me undefined because obviously I haven't attached any metadata to it. But now we have metadata attached to a class, and how can we modify the metadata? We can do it using decorators. So decorator is a function which we can call for any property, but I can call it for each property, for any number of properties of a class, and then that in that particular decorator function I can modify the metadata based on whatever I want. So let's say in this case, let me make a function, serialize. So basically you call the metadata by placing it at the top of property and then using @ so @ and then the name of the function at the top of any property. So right now place at the top of this property, and let's place at the top of this property. So now this particular function would be called for these two properties. So yeah, I've got this function here. So this function would get this target thing which we won't use, and the context. So context has pretty good information regarding stuff. So also context has the access to metadata. So what I would want is, I would want the metadata to be an array, and that array should have the key names of these properties as strings. So I want an array with the strings age and full name. So basically all the properties which have the serialized decorator metadata attached to it. So in the context I have access to metadata, so what I would do is I would say const metadata any is equal to context dot metadata. Cool. Now I would say if metadata prop names, so if there are no prop names, then I will assign an array as the initial value. Otherwise I would say dot push, what would I push? Context, oh I messed up the spelling, context dot name. So context dot name is basically the name of the properties, so in this case age and full name, right? So when I run it now, yeah, there is a TypeScript error. Let's comment it for now. Yeah, let's remove it for now. Okay, so now if I run it again, you can see that now the symbol.metadata is an object with the property prop names, and that is an array. Pretty cool. That is what I wanted. So here I got the metadata from context. I said if there is no prop names property, then there should be a prop names property with an array initialized, and if there is one, then just push the name of the property here. So now what I've got is I've got a array with these two property names. Cool. So now that is okay, but what should I do with that array? What should I do with those property names? Now I can use it to do some interesting things. So let's say I want that I add a toJSON function, right? And this toJSON function should convert this class into a JSON string, but in this case only the properties which for which I am running the decorator. So in this case I want this particular object which I will create from this class to be converted into a JSON string, but only these properties, age and full name, not first name, last name, or any other property, because I want that only the properties which I want to serialize, in this case for which I want to run the decorator function, I only want those in the JSON string, not everything else. So now we can use this metadata to do this. So let's say I add a toJSON method, and here I say return JSONify this, and here I uncomment it. Let me import it. Cool. So in toJSON function method of the class, I am returning this JSONify function and passing this. So this is basically the instance of that class, the instance or the object which would be created from that class. So now I've got the instance, so I will first get the metadata from it. So we know that metadata is property of the class, not the instance. So I'll say metadata is equal to instance dot constructor and symbol dot metadata, and here I would say const prop names. So I would get the prop names now from here. Metadata prop names as string. Cool. So now I would construct an object from those prop names. So I would say prop names or array dot reduce, and I would get the object here, which is the accumulator and the key, and I would pass an initial value of an object. So I would say here object key is equal to instance. So instance is the object, right? And this object is basically the accumulator we have here. So key, and then I would return the object which is the accumulator, and there I'm returning JSON.stringify new object. Cool. So what I'm doing right now here is prop names would be an array, right, as we saw earlier, full name age. So I'm reducing that full name age uh, array in such a way that I am assigning only those key and value pairs to the new object, and this the new object is this. So what I would get is only an object with these keys and values, and then I would return the stringified version of this. So yeah, let's see. So now I would say const person is equal to new person. Let me say Usman, then last name is Rahman, then age is 87, and then here I would say console log person dot to JSON. So now I do this and I get a stringified version of only full name and age properties, because only these had the decorator function with those things, with those properties. If I, let's say, copy this and place it here, now I should get the last name in this object as well. See, full name, last name, and age. So this is just one example that was in the blog for TypeScript 5.2, but the possibilities are endless, and you can see how that is a pretty powerful feature, just like Disposable was. And also they added a bunch of IntelliSense and other things which I think are pretty cool. So let me know what you think. If you have any confusion regarding any of these things, you can comment down below. I'll try to answer them. And also kindly like and subscribe. It helps me a lot in pushing out more videos, because it makes me motivated. If you have any further requests as well, you can comment down below, and I'll try to make it. As always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.